Well, what a match we ended up witnessing. A match that, truth be told, had no right being as thrilling as it did. But what it means is the defending champions England have qualified by the barest of margins, thanks in no small part to a big favour from their biggest cricketing arch rivals, Australia.
Of course. I mean, see, in the space of 6 hours today, we have seen two thrillers. One wasn't a thriller as far as the scorecard is concerned. The rain that lashed Vivian Richards Stadium in Antigua, you felt as if, okay, England's chances are done. But they somehow braved the conditions. They somehow managed to ensure that, okay, they got to a good total in 10 overs. And then after that, they restricted Namibia. So that's what they did their job. Scotland today had to win by whatever margin it was possible, but unfortunately, 180 for 5. You thought that they had done all the work with Brendan McMullen scoring a brilliant 50. But then Travis Head, big game experience, yet again, he scores a 50. And also Tim David holding a school, Scotland dropping catches, missing their length at the most inopportune time, meant that B group is finally being decided after
But sir, you missed one
7
thing.
hours.
You missed one thing. You missed a Marcus Stoinis 50. Without that, I don't think this game was
What?
going anywhere. I know Head had a 50, but that 50 was a little bit on the slower side after he lost partners. And again, with Australia, you always look at them and say, there's so many question marks, right? We know Warner hasn't been in any form going into, let's say, the ICC World Cup, hasn't really shown much form except for that one knock against England. Mitch Marsh hasn't shown much form either. But these guys, we know, I'm not counting them out just yet because, quite frankly, in knockouts, they're a different beast. But again, today they needed a big favor from Marcus Stoinis, who again has been coming into this tournament mixed form. Without his quick fire 50, this match goes nowhere. Him and Tim David were the difference makers.
I think what
Yes, I
it
mean,
really
Marcus
go
Stoinis said you would remember the best strike rate that he's got with minimum 50 balls
yes,
in this
yes,
entire
yes.
tournament. It is Marcus Stoinis at this point in time.
I think what it really goes on to show is the kind of depth that Australia have not just in their 15 but in their 11 also, because it's not just they're not just reliant on a couple of players to get the job done. It's obviously a case of people coming in and making those handy contributions or even playing those big knocks. So that's where I think that's what I think separates Australia uh, from the rest of the probably Super 8 teams who have also qualified there. But then I think once again you really have to give credit to Scotland for the fight that they have shown. I think that they did pretty much whatever they could throughout the tour, throughout their 4 matches. Once again, you would just want to go back and see how had that game against England not been abandoned due to rain, things could have been completely different. Something that Siddharth and I also discussed during our live after the England and Namibia game. They did really really well in the remaining 2 matches. Also finished the game against Oman in 13.1 overs. Like it was very steadfast. But then yeah, it's very a game of
3.1, you mean? Not 13.1, 3.1.
yeah. No. I'm talking about Scotland and Oman. You know,
Ah, okay.
at the halfway stage, Scotland were obviously going well, but when the drinks break happened, after that they got those 45 or 46 odd runs in the next 3.1 overs. So basically, the intent was completely there. There was nothing missing, but you have to like feel for Scotland. They did everything that they could throughout the tournament, but as they say, cricket is a game of fine margins. You really need to, take those catches, make sure you restrict the run flow. They might sound cliches, but that is true. That is what turned the game in Australia's favor today. And that's why, they are unbeaten going into the Super 8.
Yeah, I mean, see, they are now along with India now, they are the only unbeaten team at this point in time. Along
South
with,
Africa.
even I think
South Africa.
South Africa
Yeah,
just
yeah,
by the
yeah.
barest of margins, they have managed to scrape through. Afghanistan have also not lost, so have the West Indies. They are going to face in a table topper soon. Maybe by Monday, I think they are facing that game.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
great stuff from Australia. And I think an incident occurred today. Travis Head got hit for six sixes in 1 over. Was that the case? We'll have to check that because I think McMullen took a liking to Travis Head, if I'm not mistaken. We'll have to check that out. So, in that sense, if you look at it, there were moments where Scotland did dominate. There were moments where, yes, they dictated the terms to the Aussies at this particular point in time. So that's why I think it is a big, big feat that Scotland have achieved in this World Cup. I mean, two World Cups on the trot, they have managed to stretch full-time nations to the limit. I mean, look at what they did to the West Indies in 2022. Look at what they have done to England. Look at what they have done to Australia. I think they have held their own in this group. So that's why I think Scotland deserve the plaudits. But I think against the better opponent they lost, see, it will still read 5 points for England, 5 points for Scotland. But unfortunately, the net run rate, that Oman game, killed Scotland off because England chased it
Yes,
down in just 3.1 overs. And that's
3.1
why,
overs.
yes, I mean, everybody did their bit. Brad Wheel, for example, was fantastic today. One maiden, but then it was Wheel himself who allowed the wheels to go off because, see, he got that four leg buys, he got those 4 runs, that crucial over in which he bowled, that really sealed their fate. So that's why
Yeah, absolutely.
it
And
And
by
was
the way,
even
Siddharth, I just have to interject here. There was no instance of Travis Head getting hit. He didn't even bowl today.
yes, it
I,
wasn't
I
the
had to
case.
double check because I got a little confused.
yeah, I know. I
Like
think
it wasn't the case
people are
because even
ending up
I
on a
was.
wild
I
goose
think they,
chase them.
yeah, there was a gap between the sixes that were hit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think Travis Head and Mitchell and Marcus Stoinis, I think, were the big six hitters along with Tim David today. So that's why it was truly a remarkable, remarkable feat that you're looking at this point in time.
Yeah, but full
So
credit, by the way, to Scotland because I don't think anyone was expecting this sort of a match from them. And talking not just about the Australia game, throughout the tournament, many people had written them off as walkovers. But the kind of showings they've had, I think it wouldn't be surprising now if you might see a few of the lower level ICC teams at least interested in playing a few games with them. I would really want to see some more Scotland bilaterals because again they've been really good. Not just this tournament,
yeah,
even 22, as we were pointing out, they did hold their own more often than not. I mean, we're talking about England being unlucky due to rain in that match against Scotland. What if Scotland had got off or pulled off an upset? They were looking very ominous in the few overs that they did bat. It's just that rain denied them the chance to do anything beyond that. So I think Scotland are one of those teams. We talk about surprise teams. The way Scotland have played has opened a lot of eyes in this tournament. A lot of eyes.
This
yeah.
is where
I think Australia are
I
going to
I
play
really
three
want to ask you
T20s
a question.
against Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is where I want to ask a question to both of you, and this is something that I think we have discussed a lot in the past, and even in the most recent past also. That every time a big tournament comes, a big ICC tournament comes, we discuss about having more associate nations. We discuss about the performances that that these associate nations put. Then there are a few upsets. Then there are a few stunning wins. So whether it is USA beating Pakistan, Scotland, probably getting the better
Beating
of
England and Australia.
yeah, England and Australia. Then in 2022, we saw that England lost to Ireland eventually, but they went on to win the tournament. Then there was Namibia defeating Sri Lanka. If I'm not wrong, it was
Yeah,
2022.
Scotland
So
beating
that's
West Indies.
yeah, but that's where my question lies. That if it's just going to be the case of okay, these XYZ has beaten ABC, a top ranked ABC, they should have more bilateral ties. I don't really think that the ICC is doing much to make sure that there are more series of the teams like, or the bilateral series of the teams like Scotland, Zimbabwe, Namibia, PNG for that matter, scheduled against any of the top ranked teams, so that they can get that exposure at the international level. So when it comes to the high pressure situations in the ICC tournaments, things just don't really go in one team's way. It should really be a balance. You look at the last over when Tim David got that leading edge, and it was dropped at deep mid wicket. So
Yeah,
that is where I think the pressure lies, because if that particular fielder would have played in more matches in more high pressure situations, things could have been different. He could have probably taken that catch. So that's what I think pressure does to you. So I don't really understand that if there are no series scheduled for such teams in the future tours program, I think things might just remain the same, because we have been talking the same thing again and again and again. There's no change.
You know what, Siddharth? I'll correct you a
Look,
little bit there. You said that the ICC needs to do, they're not doing much. I disagree with you there. They're not doing anything. Much would imply that they're doing something. But I'm sorry, the ICC at this point are doing precious little apart from, as I mentioned before, extracting every drop of revenue that they can from the game. We're going to have a World Cup every year. We're going to include more teams. But how are we going to make these more teams more competitive? Oh, we don't have an answer to that. Are we going to compel our full member nations to play more bilaterals against these smaller teams so that they start getting exposure and start getting better, and that therefore they don't actually, let's say, it doesn't become a 2 or 3 team World Cup every year, and potentially, hold on, you could grow the sport. I don't see that happening. I don't think the ICC takes enough initiative. I don't think the ICC is a well-run board in the least, and I can say that about a lot of top sporting boards as a whole when it comes to the governing bodies. But I think ICC is just one of those boards that takes a very hands-off approach to everything, and it is to the detriment of the sport. I mean, we're talking about trying to grow the sport beyond the usual strongholds. You are seeing the game get weaker in traditional strongholds. I mean, Pakistan have been flailing for decades at this point in time, despite whatever success they've had at the international level. A West Indies, less said the better. The hosts of this World Cup, the West Indies, were once seen as one of cricket's big success stories. Now, most of their players prefer playing franchise T20 cricket on a freelance basis because they don't get paid enough money by the board because the board is a shambles. New Zealand, again, you look at the team the way they are this time around, boss, it's badly in need of a transition. They have three
Sri
players,
Lanka,
by the way, who are. Huh?
Sri Lanka also.
Sri Lanka,
Yep.
another good example. Even for that matter, South Africa. South Africa have been a yo-yo team. At times, I feel they succeed in spite of themselves, not because of themselves. So whatever
Yep.
success they have, when you're talking bilaterals and stuff, they succeed in spite of themselves, not because of themselves. So again, these teams need the assistance of the ICC, but has that assistance more often than not been forthcoming? No, it hasn't been. The ICC is too busy trying to hover up revenue. So never mind associate nations. Most full member test playing nations are struggling. Associate nations are a long way off.
And
But that's
just have a
that's
look
where
at the.
I have an additional question for Siddharth here. That, and even Shane, you can get to him it once Siddharth answers. So do you think that this is probably the right time for the ICC to make sure that there are more tri series that happen, so that these teams can have a good chance to feature in some of the matches against the top ranked nations?
Okay, but the tri series you imply, should they play with top nations or against each other?
So I'll just give you an example. So let's just, for example, say that India are touring England for
Yeah.
a three test series. Then there is a then after that, there is a limited overs series that they have to play. That's where I think a Scotland or an Ireland can come into the picture. That's what I mean.
Hmm.
No, it's not happening for two simple reasons. Already, your FTP has been released until 2031.
Yes.
Where are we seeing any kind of bilateral or trilateral series between the top nations and the associates? Nil. Virtually nil. The associates are forming their own thing and are playing amongst each other. That's why a Namibia versus Scotland, a Namibia versus Oman, a Scotland versus Oman, or a Scotland versus Ireland, those teams, that is actually a rivalry that is brewing at this point in time. Second, the top nations don't have time. The top nations really don't have the time. Australia playing three T20As versus Scotland is an exception to the norm.
And they'll be
Normally,
sending
because
a B
they,
team.
yep, nobody will send a top player side. Nobody is going to give you the time for the associates because the FTP itself is so cramped. And because the FTP is so cramped, you just can't have any time for the associates. India are playing Zimbabwe, 5 T20Is, but will a Virat Kohli, will a Rohit Sharma feature in that? No.
More
That's
than
the
likely,
problem.
no.
There is a big three, and then there is the rest. Sure, T20 is 105 nations play. That is one thing that you can boast about. But where on earth are you going to accommodate 105? It is like in football. Brazil playing a series of games, say, versus Ghana, probably. Five,
But
they
see,
want
in
to play
football,
three,
the
four.
football comparison is a little off because you don't really have series as such in football.
Yeah.
And the other
Yes.
advantage, and this
So
is where I think cricket may benefit, I dare say, from going the football way and becoming more club centric. Why is it that a lot of these nations, African nations, South American nations remain competitive because they play in the best domestic leagues. So
Yes.
they may not be playing internationally, like you'll not see, like even right now, because of the way the football structure is, European nations are compelled to play each other. Why? Because you've got the nation state concept, which involves them having to play each other. You're trying to replace meaningless friendly games. But because of that, an Argentina, a Brazil, an Uruguay, a Paraguay, which are top teams in South America, can't play against European teams. Why is it that Argentina are having to play warm-up games going into the Copa America against Guatemala and Panama? Because that is the opposition that they will be facing. They can't be facing the European opposition. The European teams are all playing in the Euros. And now
Euro.
with the
Yeah.
Euros being extended from 16 teams to 24 teams, that's 8 more teams qualifying. The smaller teams will not be that interested in playing because their players would then want some rest. So it's a catch-22. The reason why you see a lot of these teams suddenly shoot up, for instance, think back to 2022 and the dream run that Morocco had. Why is
Yeah.
it that they had such a good, base? Because a lot of those players were they were allowed their expatriate players to play. So players like Achraf Hakimi was born and raised in Madrid, but because he had Moroccan roots and the Moroccan government ensured that these players could be allowed to play, they said no, we'll play for our homelands. Why should we want to play for Spain? They did. And see, the experience of playing in those top leagues came in handy in today's day and age. That's why I say, why is it that you see certain players who play in the IPL on a consistent basis be able to have that pressure quotient? The foreign players, I'm not talking about the Indian players because we've not really had that much success stories.
Okay.
But a Warner, started his career internationally, then came on to the IPL and basically made himself made an all-time great career out of that. Why? Because they were able to, thrive in that pressure situation of being in the IPL and of playing in the best league. That's what most footballers do. A lot of African players, they may not be able to, let's say, play in their domestic leagues, but if they become good enough, they end up getting scouted by top European nations. And what will happen then? They'll end up playing in the top leagues. And top leagues doesn't necessarily mean you have to be playing in, say, in England, Spain, France. You could be playing
Exactly.
in Austria. You could be playing in an Austria level or even in this thing, as long as you're making it to top tier level European competitions. If you're playing Europa League, if you're playing, Champions League, if you're playing Conference League, all of that is helpful. But it's very interspersed. With cricket, unfortunately, the focus always has been international. So what happens there is India are compelled to mostly play only the test full member nations. Very rare is it that you see them have a series. I'm saying fine, you send a B team also, but you can have. And I'm sorry, India has the talent pool that they can be playing that many series. Whilst you are having a series against England, what's stopping you from having a series just before, wherein you're playing against a Zimbabwe or a Scotland, a three-match T20I series? What is stopping you? Nothing is stopping you. You can send two different teams. Our board secretary
Because
himself has said that
usually,
we are in a situation where we can send three different teams.
yes,
Yep.
because usually what happens is that, these teams go on to play just one of T20Is or one of ODIs against Scotland and Ireland just to make sure that they are prepared for the future white ball series that's going to come up against England. That's
Yep.
usually
Correct.
the case.
So anyway, we have been joined by Ambati Raidu. Ambati Raidu on chat is like saying, "Man, oh man,
Ooh.
England will be a big problem for all of us. Let's see how that happens." Because Ambati Raidu is, I mean, I know it's a fake profile. I know it's like he's created it, but still, Ambati Raidu is saying that England's going to be a problem now. See, Sid, you pointed out one thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Any team that struggles and then reaches the playoff stages goes on to win the T20 World Cup. England have fulfilled that one criteria. England have fulfilled it. So that is why your words
They'll
And
be
seem to be
actually, if
having
you
coming
look at
true.
it, last year also they made a similarly slow start. They had that
yes,
DLS loss to Ireland. They huffed and puffed home, I think, after that against Sri Lanka to ensure that they made the
Yes.
semis. But then once they made the semis, they had that 10-wicket win against India. After that, it was all systems go. Again, I'm
Yeah.
sure against Pakistan it was a tricky pitch, but considering the amount of wickets they had in hand, was it ever really in doubt that they would be winning? Probably not.
No, they weren't.
you know
So
what
Kudratran form
Shane?
actually was for England, not for Pakistan, if you look at it.
Mm.
Last two World Cups. T20,
So
I'm talking.
What Shane here means is that dar ka mahal hai. As simple as that.
Look,
The Mahal hai, but
Even Australia, they've had really, correct me if I'm wrong, they've not lost a single game.
no, they haven't.
See,
But
Australia, India, and South Africa haven't lost a game so far. West Indies and Afghanistan also haven't lost a game. But the two teams are going to be up against each other in a day, And that's where I think only one of the team is going to go unbeaten into the Super 8, assuming there is no washout.
Yeah, but the other difference also, why I was pointing out Australia is they may have won all their games, but they've been far from convincing. Let's be fair.
Yeah,
The only
Yeah,
convincing win they had, ironically, was against England. Even that, if
exactly.
one England batter had to stick on, 36 runs is not a lot in T20 cricket. So they haven't looked that convincing yet, but they some switch flicks once they reach crucial matches, knockouts. Again, Mitchell
yeah.
Stark has been pretty ordinary so far in the group stages. What will happen to him once the knockouts happens? He'll suddenly start
Hmm.
swinging at left, right, and center.
And Glenn Maxwell fell to a left arm spinner, but you know what will happen in a
Knockout game.
knockout game. You know what will happen. So that's
I
why.
think
See,
Glenn Maxwell not performing, once again, I remember asking this question in one of the lives that we did, and I'll ask you again. Do you see a certain Josh English replacing an out of form Glenn Maxwell in those
No,
important matches?
they will
if they have
not
not
drop
replaced a
Maxwell.
David Warner, if they haven't replaced a David Warner who's not in form, what chance does a Glenn Maxwell have?
Warner has
Also
at
with
least
Maxwell,
done
he has
well.
that
Warner,
maverick factor.
yeah,
Yeah,
Maxwell has the maverick factor. What works for him is that he'll not perform in 9 games out of 10. The one match he does perform, he's winning you. So that in itself is what allows him. Plus, don't forget, he gives you some good bowling options. I think he bowled four
yeah.
overs today.
He did. He did. He did. He did
he
bowl
did,
four
he did,
overs.
he did.
He and Zampa formed the bowling core today of the spinners. So that is why it's going to be very, very interesting. So
Yeah.
looking
The
at the
Super
current
8s now are
situation,
all but sealed. I think only tomorrow's games are left, which will tell you who's going to be that last team to make the Super 8.
yeah, Group 2
Yes.
is sealed. West Indies, South Africa, England, USA. These are the four. And in the other group, it is India, Afghanistan, Australia. You are awaiting either of Netherlands or
Or
Bangladesh in that.
Bangladesh.
Yeah, because
No,
Nepal
no,
are
but
out.
I have one comment to take from Shri Citizen where he says that Maxwell equals KL Rahul equals long ropes. Maxwell has played more match winning knocks in ICC tournaments. Oh, sorry. That's a
I
very
know. I mean,
unfair
see, Citizen, if
comparison.
you're comparing it to KL Rahul, I'm sorry, boss.
No, no, no,
Maxwell,
no.
201, enough said. The greatest knock in this modern era. Looking at the circumstance, now you'll say, "Oh, it's against Afghanistan," but no,
But
boss.
that was an
Afghanistan
Afghanistan
are
team that was
now
breathing fire.
yes,
Afghanistan
yes,
had no more
91
minnows.
for 7 to 293.
Listen, that match was a lost match at that point in time. And Maxwell also was batting through, remember, severe cramps, this, that, everything possible he batted through
Yep, he
True,
was like the
true.
Undertaker, rising from the dead.
from the dead.
Indeed, indeed. So, Group
I
B
hope
has
you are
been
not going to
done.
say those three words that Undertaker has said a lot.
Well, if he defeats an opponent, he can soon say it.
Rest
See,
in peace.
he'll get it
Mm.
on 24th. He'll get the chance on 24th. Let's see
Oh,
how
God.
that pans out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
India versus Australia in St. Lucia, by the way, and this is the same St. Lucia. This is the kind of wicket that you're getting. So St. Lucia is delivering good wickets. Barbados is delivering okayish wickets. Vivian Richards ground is giving you good wickets. So that's the
yeah.
three venues
Yeah,
where
actually, the
India will
only
have to
tough
keep an
ones
eye.
really are Providence, where you will be having a
Yeah,
semi.
Providence. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, yep.
Wherein I think even 150 will actually mean like you've scored more than 200.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very
See,
slow
because
pitch.
in that group, India could face either of the West Indies, South Africa, or England.
Yes.
And if it's England again, so डर का माहौल है. West Indies,
Mm.
डर का माहौल है. South Africa, maybe you can go into a bit more confidence because they will tend to choke at the most opportune times if you look at it. So,
Mm.
yep. So Group B, oof, what a day! 7, 8 hours. We thought rain will play spoil sport. Last moment it didn't. So England make it. Scotland out thanks to Australia. Will the Ashes now
But
have less
Scotland won hard.
intensity?
Scotland really did win hard.
They did. They did. If they hadn't dropped catches, they could have
They
very
may
well
have
done
even
it.
gone through. Mm.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yes. Yes.
So B1, England, B2, Australia, both are through. So this is how the groups pan out. India, USA from A1, A2 through. B1, B2, Australia, England, Australia are through. C1, C2, Afghanistan, West Indies through. D1 South Africa through D2 Netherlands slash Bangladesh. Because India will have a lot of eyes on that. India are playing D2. So, in that sense, finally the T20 World Cup is taking shape. So,
Absolutely.
gentlemen, yep. So, gentlemen, let's rejoin later in the day when we discuss all the other things. Thank you so much, folks, for joining us for this morning update. We'll be back with more from Sports Today. Subscribe, and so that you know when we go live. Subscribe to Sports Today from me, Sid Gulati, and Shane Dias. Bye bye.
Bye bye.